Okay, so just to be clear, said Marcy, typing furiously on her phone while balancing a mug of cider on her knee. I'm making mashed potatoes, cornbread stuffing, and a sweet potato casserole. Jenny's bringing cranberry sauce, Brian's on drinks, and… She paused, squinting at the group sprawled across her living room. And Caleb, what exactly are you bringing again? Caleb, who was lying upside down on the couch like gravity was a casual suggestion, tilted his head and grinned. My charming personality. That's not edible, Marcy deadpanned. It could be, Jenny said, sipping her cider. Depends on how desperate we get. Caleb smirked. Hey, I also said I'd bring rolls. You can't go wrong with rolls. They're like the duct tape of meals. Hold everything together. Rolls are fine, Marcy said, tapping the screen with finality. But I swear, if you show up with those off-brand ones that taste like sponges. I would never insult this table like that, Caleb interrupted with mock offense. Only the best rolls for my friends. Pillsbury has my loyalty. Brian, lounging in the armchair with his phone, piped up without looking up. What about the turkey? Who's dealing with the 50-pound bird in the room? All eyes slid to Marcy. She froze mid-sip of cider. I may have gone a little overboard. A little? Jenny raised an eyebrow. How big are we talking? Marcy pulled up a picture on her phone and held it up. Gasps and groans erupted. The turkey in the photo looked less like dinner and more like something that had survived a Jurassic Park sequel. That thing could feed a village, Caleb said, nearly falling off the couch in laughter. It was on sale. Marcy protested, cheeks pink. And the cashier dared me. Jenny snorted. So what you're saying is, we're having Friendsgiving and then second Friendsgiving and then leftovers week 2025. Exactly, Marcy said, unapologetic. Nobody leaves hungry. That's the rule. The group groaned, but secretly they were excited. Friendsgiving was their tradition. Messy, loud, and always way too much food. Fine, Brian said, setting down his phone. But if we all explode from overeating, it's on you. Noted, Marcy said, and I expect flattering praise. The group laughed, and for a moment, the living room was warm with the glow of string lights, cider steam, and the comfort of chosen family. None of them noticed the flicker of the overhead bulb or the faint, cold draft sneaking through the cracks of the window. The morning of their Friendsgiving celebration dawned with the kind of crisp air that made the whole neighborhood smell faintly like wood smoke and wet leaves. Inside Marcy's kitchen, however, it smelled like absolute chaos. Who knew turkeys had this many weird body parts? Caleb asked, dangling a plastic-wrapped giblet bag between two fingers like it was toxic waste. Jenny gagged from across the counter. Stop swinging it around like a medieval weapon. Put it in the trash. I feel like we should keep it, Caleb said thoughtfully. You know, as a centerpiece. Like, behold the organ bag of friendship. Absolutely not, Marcy said, elbow deep in stuffing. Her hair was frizzing out of its bun, and her apron already had what looked suspiciously like cranberry fingerprints across the front. Do not desecrate my table with giblets. Brian sauntered in holding a six-pack of cider. You'll realize this is how horror movies start, right? Giant turkey, abandoned giblets, too many carbs. Next thing you know, bam, Pilgrim ghost. Don't even joke about that, Jenny said, smacking him lightly with a wooden spoon. We already have enough to deal with. As if on cue, the oven timer dinged and a muffled thud shook the floor. Everyone froze. Please tell me that was just the sweet potatoes, Marcy said, eyes darting toward the oven. Brian leaned down to peer through the glass. His eyes went wide. Oh no. Inside, the turkey was spreading. The skin bubbled and crisped, juices spilling out in alarming quantities. It looked less like a dinner bird and more like it was trying to stage a breakout. Jenny clutched the spoon like a sword. It's growing. It's not growing, Marcy snapped, though she sounded less than convinced. It's just extra juicy. With a hit, Caleb backed away slowly. Okay, nobody panic, but I think it just moved. Marcy waved her flour-coated hands. It's fine. Totally fine. Just a little animated. Like Toy Story, but with poultry. The friends exchanged nervous glances. The bird sizzled ominously, like it was laughing. Brian cracked open a cider. I'm just saying, he muttered, if this thing stands up, I'm out. By the time the sun dipped low and the string lights flickered on, Marcy's apartment smelled like a Norman Rockwell painting, if Norman Rockwell had painted with gravy and chaos. The table groaned under the weight of food. The not-so-trustworthy turkey, 3 types of stuffing, 2 bowls of mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce that still had the can lines imprinted on the side, and enough pies to qualify as a bakery. Ladies and gentlemen, Caleb announced with a dramatic sweep of his arm, and Brian. Rude, Brian muttered. I present to you, the Feast of Friendship 2025. May our stomachs be brave, and may our pants have mercy. They dug in like people who hadn't eaten in weeks. Plates piled high, gravy rivers flowing, jokes flying across the table faster than the rolls. Jenny poked at the turkey with her fork. You know it is suspiciously quiet. It's cooked, Marcy insisted, already halfway through her second mountain of stuffing. Cooked things don't move. Tell that to Jello, Caleb said, watching his cranberry blob wobble threateningly. Brian leaned back in his chair, cider in hand. You realize if we die from overeating, some future ghost is going to find our bodies and be like, well, at least they died happy. Whatever, Jenny said. If anyone's haunting this apartment, it's going to be a turkey farmer furious about how badly we cooked his prize bird. Caleb grinned wickedly. Or maybe we'll summon the ghost of leftovers past, condemned to wander eternity, moaning, why did you buy a 12-pound bag of potatoes? Everyone burst out laughing, the sound bouncing off the walls and mixing with the clink of forks and the warm crackle of the space heater. The moment was perfect, messy, silly, loud, and exactly what Friendsgiving was supposed to be. None of them noticed the faint flicker of the dining room light or the icy draft sneaking in through the window, ruffling the napkins ever so slightly. The laughter at the table was still going strong when the dining room light gave a sharp pop and flickered. Everyone froze, mid-bite. Did the bulb just explode, or is this the part where we all die? Brian asked, holding his cider like a shield. It's fine, Marcy said quickly, though her fork hovered in midair. Old wiring. No big deal. The air shifted, colder now, the kind of chill that slipped down the back of your shirt and made goosebumps bloom. A napkin fluttered off the table, drifting to the floor. Jenny rubbed her arms. Okay, why does it feel like the thermostat just dropped 20 degrees? Caleb's fork clattered onto his plate. If this is you, Brian, with one of your dumb Halloween leftover pranks. Before Brian could retort, the candles on the table flared, their flames stretching tall and thin like they were being pulled by invisible strings. And then he appeared. At the head of the table, in the only empty chair, sat a man dressed in old-fashioned pilgrim garb, tall hat, buckled shoes, the whole museum diorama look. His form shimmered faintly, translucent, like bad cable reception. His eyes, however, were sharp and locked on the mountain of food before him. The friends gasped. The pilgrim ghost slammed his fist on the table. Silverware rattled. At last, he boomed, voice echoing as though it came from everywhere at once. A feast worthy of my hunger. Jenny's mouth fell open. Oh my God. Caleb, you actually did summon the ghost of leftovers past. I was joking. Caleb squeaked, sinking low in his chair. The ghost turned his head slowly, glaring at each of them in turn. Then, with unnerving calm, he reached across the table, plucked up a dinner roll, and sniffed it. Pillsbury, he muttered. Acceptable. The pilgrim ghost tore the dinner roll in half, steam rising into his translucent hands. He took a bite, chewed slowly, and then gave a single nod. Soft. Warm. A humble bread. The rolls pass. Cool. Glad you approve, Caleb muttered. Now please, kindly vanish back to whatever colonial buffet you crawled out of. But the ghost was already reaching for the mashed potatoes. He scooped a spoonful, let it hover in front of his spectral face, and slurped it down. His eyes widened. Skinless, he bellowed, slamming the spoon onto the table so hard it rattled the cranberry sauce. Where are the skins? The lumps? The rustic, earthy chunks of authenticity? Jenny blinked. You wanted lumps? Authenticity. The ghost cried, pointing at her as if she'd confessed to witchcraft. These are the potatoes of the pampered. The potatoes of cowards. Brian raised his cider. To coward potatoes. The group clinked their glasses, trying not to laugh. Unamused, the ghost swiveled toward the stuffing. He scooped a forkful, shoved it into his mouth, and chewed with exaggerated slowness. Finally, he swallowed and gave a disappointed sigh. Too much sage. You season as though you fear blandness more than death itself. Which we do, Marcy muttered. He ignored her, eyes already locked on the cranberry sauce. He picked up the wobbly, ridged cylinder straight from the dish and held it up to examine it. This is sorcery. His eyes narrowed. What beast has such ribs? Jenny giggled. That's from a can. The ghost gasped, clutching his chest. Canned berries? Abomination. You know what's an abomination? Caleb shot back. Uninvited ghost guests. But the ghost had moved on, lifting a slice of pumpkin pie. He took one bite and immediately spat it back out. The glob sailed right through the table and splattered on the floor. This crust is soggy, he roared. Where is the marrow pie of tradition? The boiled pumpkin with hearty broth? You modern heathens call this a feast? The friends exchanged wide-eyed glances as the candles flickered violently, their flames bending toward the ghost as though bowing. So, Brian said carefully, he's a food critic. From beyond the grave. Fantastic, Jenny whispered. We're being roasted by a dead guy. Not roasted, the ghost said darkly. Judged. The pilgrim ghost shoved another roll into his mouth, chewing furiously. His translucent form shimmered brighter, more solid, as though every bite dragged him closer to the land of the living. Jenny whispered, is it just me, or is he getting thicker? Brian squinted. Yeah, he was see-through 5 minutes ago. Silence. The ghost thundered, reaching for the stuffing dish. He scooped it up and poured the entire thing into his mouth like it was cereal. When he swallowed, his shoulders broadened. The chair beneath him creaked in protest. Marcy clutched the tablecloth. He's literally bulking up on carbs. Caleb leaned back nervously. Dude's gonna need his own zip code by dessert. The ghost stretched his arms wide, his sleeves brushing against the wine glasses. Yes, at last. Flesh. Flavor. A feast fit for kings and, he paused mid-sentence, eyeing the mac and cheese. He scooped a forkful, examined it suspiciously, then tasted. He froze. What sorcery is this golden nectar? He whispered. It is smooth, creamy, both humble and divine. His eyes filled with tears. I have been a fool. Ha, Jenny slapped the table. See? Mac and cheese always wins people over. Silence, wench, the ghost said, blotting his spectral tears with a napkin. I am not moved so easily. Yet, he scooped more mac and cheese directly into his hat and wore it like a cheesy crown. Brian nearly spit out his cider. Okay, nope, I draw the line at macaroni headwear. But the ghost wasn't listening. He lunged for the turkey. The giant bird, golden and glistening, slid across the platter as his greedy hands gripped it. He tore off a drumstick with a sound like a tree snapping in half, juice dripping onto the table. As he gnawed, his ghostly form pulsed, growing taller, broader. His voice boomed louder, rattling the dishes. More, he roared. Bring me everything. This table is mine. The friends scrambled back in their chairs, shielding their plates. Jenny hissed, he's gonna eat all the food. Caleb clutched the cranberry sauce like a lifeline. Over my dead body. Brian raised an eyebrow. Pretty sure that's what he's aiming for. Okay, nobody panic, Marcy said, holding up her hands as the pilgrim ghost gnawed turkey like a medieval warlord. We just need to, I don't know, do an exorcism or something. Jenny blinked. You know how to do an exorcism? Marcy paused. I watched one episode of a ghost hunting show last week. Great, Caleb muttered. We're saved. The ghost slammed his greasy turkey leg onto the table, bones splintering like thunder. Your feast is mine, and when I finish this bird, I shall consume the very walls of this dwelling. Not my deposit, Marcy hissed, panic rising. Okay, salt? Spirits hate salt, right? Brian shrugged. That's snails. Same difference. They scrambled to the kitchen. Caleb came back first, clutching a salt shaker. He sprinted around the table, sprinkling a line like a frantic chef on a cooking show. The ghost paused mid-bite, glanced down at the salt, then calmly leaned over and blew it away with a puff of ghostly wind. The line scattered instantly. Caleb froze. Well, that didn't work. Try sage. Jenny shouted. I've got sage tea in my bag. She tore open a tea bag, shook the dry leaves into her hand, and tossed them dramatically at the ghost like confetti. The leaves passed straight through him, fluttered onto the turkey, and stuck there in a sad, herbal clump. The ghost licked the turkey skin. Needs more. Jenny deflated. Unbelievable. Latin. Marcy shouted desperately. Somebody say something in Latin. Brian lifted his cider. Carpe diem. That's not an exorcism. Marcy groaned. It's all the Latin I know. Meanwhile, Caleb had armed himself with dinner rolls, pelting them across the table. One bounced off the ghost's hat. Another sailed straight through his chest and hit the wall with a soft thud. The ghost looked unimpressed. Bread? Truly? Caleb froze mid-throw. Worth a shot. The ghost's voice thundered through the room, rattling glasses and rattling nerves. Your puny tricks are nothing. I am the hunger that endures. Jenny leaned toward Marcy, whispering, yeah, but, what if we just let him eat until he bursts? Marcy winced. Honestly? With the amount of leftovers we have, that's a real possibility. The ghost loomed over the table, chewing turkey so loudly it sounded like distant thunder. The friends huddled at the far end, whispering frantically. Okay, we can't salt him, sage him, or roll him to death, Jenny said. What's left? Maybe reason with him? Marcy suggested weakly. Caleb blinked. Reason? With that? He gestured at the ghost, who was currently pouring gravy directly into his mouth like it was Gatorade. But Brian stood, pushing back his chair. Hey, Pilgrim dude? The ghost froze mid-slosh. Slowly, he turned, gravy dripping down his chin. What? Brian cleared his throat. Why are you here? I mean, you didn't exactly RSVP. The ghost slammed the gravy boat down, shaking the table. His eyes flashed, and for the first time, his voice softened. I was a host once, he said. Long ago, in this very settlement. I prepared a harvest feast to bring my neighbors together. Venison, corn, pumpkins boiled in marrow. A feast for friendship, for unity. His shoulders slumped, but none came. They quarreled. They stayed home. And his voice cracked. I died before I could share my table. The friends fell silent, the weight of his words pressing heavier than any turkey. Marcy tilted her head. So you've been wandering around ever since? Just waiting for a feast that feels right? The ghost nodded slowly. For centuries I have drifted, hungry and hollow. My curse. To dine alone, forever craving a seat among friends. His gaze swept across the table, lingering on their plates, their laughter. Until tonight. Until this. Jenny's eyes softened. So you're not evil, you're just lonely. Lonely, he echoed, voice a mix of sorrow and longing. His spectral fingers grazed the edge of the table. I long not only for food but for fellowship. Caleb scratched the back of his neck. Well, that explains the hat. Nobody lonely ever wears a hat that tall. The ghost's lip twitched, just barely, but enough for the friends to catch it. Marcy leaned forward. Then maybe the problem isn't the food. Maybe you just want a seat at the table. The ghost's form flickered uncertainly, as though the thought itself unsettled him. A seat? For me? Brian gestured at the empty chair. Dude, it's been sitting there all night. Grab a plate. Your family now. The ghost hesitated, his flickering form caught between menace and longing. He stared at the empty chair, then at the faces around the table. For the first time all evening, his booming voice faltered. I do not belong among the living. Jenny pushed her plate toward him. Neither do these mashed potatoes, but they're here anyway. He blinked at her, then let out a sound that might have been a laugh, or maybe a hiccup from eating too fast. Slowly, cautiously, he lowered himself into the empty chair. The chair groaned but held. His translucent form shimmered brighter, less jagged at the edges. Marcy grabbed a plate, piled it with turkey, stuffing, and a mountain of mac and cheese, and slid it in front of him. There. A proper seat. A proper meal. No one eats alone at this table. The ghost stared at the plate. His hands trembled as he picked up a fork, as though the simple act of dining beside others was more powerful than any spell. Caleb raised his glass of cider. Well, if we're doing this, I say we make it official. A toast. Everyone scrambled for their glasses, clinking mismatched cups together. The ghost lifted his too, though the cider sloshed straight through his spectral hand and onto the floor. Nobody mentioned it. To Friendsgiving, Brian said. To too much food, Jenny added. To the world's weirdest dinner guest, Caleb grinned. All eyes turned to the ghost. His lips trembled, and then he spoke, voice quiet but steady. To friendship, he said. And to never dining alone again. The clink of glasses echoed through the apartment, warm and bright. The ghost raised his head, eyes shimmering with something almost human. For the first time in centuries, he looked at peace. The toast hung in the air like candlelight, soft, glowing, impossible to extinguish. The pilgrim ghost set his glass down, smiling faintly, though cider still dripped through his translucent fingers. For a few precious minutes, they all just ate. No booming, no scolding, no spectral drama, just forks clinking, chairs creaking, and the comfortable silence of people too full for words. Jenny leaned back, patting her stomach. I swear, if I eat one more bite, I'll be the next ghost haunting this apartment. Same, Brian groaned. Put, died by pie, on my tombstone. Caleb jabbed a fork at the ghost. At least we'll have company. The ghost chuckled, a deep, rolling sound that rattled the candles. Nay, you have given me more than food tonight. You have given me fellowship. And in that, my hunger is ended. His outline shimmered, growing hazy. The chair beneath him creaked as his form began to fade, piece by piece, like smoke unraveling in the wind. Marcy's eyes widened. Wait, you're leaving? I must, the ghost said gently. My curse is broken. But fret not. I shall always remember this feast. They watched as his body dissolved, his tall hat the last to linger. Just before it winked out, a small paper sack appeared on the table, glowing faintly. Jenny reached for it. Inside, wrapped in parchment, were a few rolls, a slice of turkey, and a wedge of pie. Caleb's jaw dropped. Did he just pack himself a ghostly to-go bag? Brian laughed so hard he nearly spilled his cider. Man couldn't resist leftovers. Legendary. Marcy shook her head, grinning. Well, I guess even ghosts know Friendsgiving isn't over until you raid the fridge. The room felt warmer again, the air steady, the lights calm. They raised their glasses one last time. To the leftover ghost, Jenny said. May he never judge our potatoes again, Caleb added. And with that, they dove back into the food, because after all, there were still at least 6 pies left, and no ghost living or dead was going to help them finish. Thanks for joining our Friendsgiving feast. If you laughed, gasped, or craved pie at least once, hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another spooky fun story. Who knows, maybe next time, you'll be the one bringing the ghostly leftovers.